when a 32-year-old CEO ordered security to tow a rusted pickup truck from her executive parking lot. She had no idea the quiet black man in faded work clothes. Watching his vehicle get dragged away was worth more than her entire company. She judged him by his skin. She judged him by his truck. 2 hours later, her billion-dollar merger started crumbling, and the only person who could save her empire was the same black single dad she had publicly humiliated on a freezing Chicago sidewalk, while her own security guard stood there and silently laughed right along with her. The morning had teeth. At 6:47, Victoria Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of her corner office on the 43rd floor of Sterling Capital, watching the city wake beneath her in shades of steel and bruised gold. January in Chicago did not whisper. It cut. It bit at the lake and the streets, and at anyone foolish enough to be standing still. Behind her, the contracts that would either crown her or bury her sat in 3 identical leather binders on her desk. She studied her reflection in the dark glass. Charcoal suit, hair pulled tight, a face that had learned at 22 not to flinch in a boardroom full of men who never bothered learning her first name. Today, the room would learn it. Today she would close a $2 billion merger with Garrison Financial, the largest deal in Sterling Capital's 60-year history, and every analyst, every investor, every quiet rival waiting for her to fail would have to find someone new to underestimate. Her phone buzzed. A message from her father, who had built the company and never quite finished leaving it. "Don't screw this up." She deleted the text without answering. 3 words. He could have written anything, and he had chosen those 3. At 7:15, she rode the elevator down to the lobby to check the ceremony setup. White cloth, champagne towers, a podium with both company logos already projected onto the back wall. She made notes the way other women might have made prayers. Her phone rang. Marcus Webb from security. "Miss Sterling, we've got a situation in your reserved slot. Old pickup truck. The driver came back. Won't engage with us. Want us to tow it." She did not ask who the driver was. She did not ask why a pickup truck was in her lot. The merger was in 5 hours, and 1,000 small things needed her, and a rusted vehicle in her spot was not one of them. "Tow it now," she said, and hung up. Outside, on the sidewalk in front of Sterling Capital, a man stood with his hands in the pockets of a brown work jacket that had once been new and was not new anymore. The patch on his chest read Johnson's Auto, in stitched yellow thread. He had driven across the river to deliver a rebuilt transmission to a friend doing maintenance work in the basement of the building, and the friend had said, "Go ahead. Park in any empty slot up top for 10 minutes. Nobody comes through that early." The friend had been wrong. Marcus Johnson watched the yellow tow truck angle into position behind his pickup. He watched the chain hook clatter against the rear axle. He did not say anything. The 2 security guards stood between him and his vehicle, with that particular practiced posture men use when they have already decided who you are. One of them looked Marcus up and down and said, "This isn't your neighborhood, brother. Move along." Marcus heard it. He heard all of it. The word brother in that mouth. The word neighborhood from a man who lived in a county he could not afford. The chain tightening against the metal where Sarah had once rested her hand on the door 4 years ago, on the last drive they had ever taken together. He did not argue. He did not even raise his voice. He turned and walked toward the bridge with his breath ghosting white in the cold air, and high above him a 32-year-old CEO laughed out loud and never once looked down. By 9:30, the 43rd floor was full of motion. Junior analysts moved through hallways with the quiet urgency of people who had been told something important was at stake without being told exactly what. Victoria sat in her office and tried to read the merger documents one more time, because 400 pages of corporate language did not become safe just because 7 lawyers had already said so. Her assistant Michelle appeared in the doorway, pale. "There are some investors here. They are upset." "Which investors?" "Holstrom Group, Pembroke Capital. They are in conference room B." Victoria felt the small shift in her stomach that always preceded bad news. She walked the corridor at the pace of someone who refused to run, and she pushed open the glass door of conference room B with a smile she did not feel. 4 men in dark suits stood around the table. Richard Holstrom did not return the smile. Peter Yates did not even look up. "We need to talk about the merger," Richard said. She kept her face still. "The contract has been vetted by every senior counsel in this firm." "Then, explain to me," Peter said. "Section 12, subsection 14, clause 9. He turned a tablet toward her. "We have been reading. Our analysts have been reading, and we are very concerned about what we are reading." She did not have the contract memorized to that depth. No CEO did. That was what lawyers were for. But the precise way her investors were quoting clauses told her something her own legal team had failed to flag, and the temperature of the room dropped a full degree, while she pretended she could feel her own hands. "Give me 1 hour," she said. "I will have answers." Back in her office, her phone rang before she could sit down. David Garrison, CEO of the company she was about to absorb. "Victoria, big day. Listen, I just wanted to thank you again for being so flexible during the negotiations. The affiliate disclosure adjustments. Your legal team has been wonderful to work with." "The affiliate disclosure adjustments, yes. The modifications we requested in the third revision. The reporting timeline changes. Your people signed off without a single follow-up question. We will see you at noon." She put the phone down very slowly. She did not remember approving any timeline changes. She did not remember a third revision conversation about reporting affiliates at all. She called Thomas Renwick, her chief counsel. "Bring me everything related to affiliate disclosure. Now. Bring everyone who touched Section 12. 5 minutes later, all 7 attorneys stood in her office. 7 men and women with degrees from Harvard and Columbia and Stanford. The most expensive minds her father's money had ever purchased. Thomas sat in front of her laptop and read silently. His face did something Victoria had never seen on his face before. It went gray at the edges. "Hold on," he murmured. "What did you find?" "The disclosure timeline. If Garrison has affiliate relationships they have not yet revealed, they are not required to reveal them until 18 months after closing." Sarah Park, a junior associate, said carefully. "And if those affiliates have pre-existing governance agreements that transfer to Sterling as part of the merger, then those agreements bind us," Thomas finished. Victoria did not raise her voice. "Read me Section 12 again. Read it slowly. Now read Section 19. Now overlay them. Now tell me what happens to board composition in month 18. Nobody answered. The silence in her office was the silence of 7 brilliant people who had just realized they had walked their CEO to the edge of a cliff and tied her shoes for her. 2 hours before the signing, 2 hours before $2 billion walked out of her hand and into a structure none of them had read carefully enough to understand. Thomas was the first to speak again, and his voice had the careful pitch of a man who knew he was about to suggest something ridiculous. "There is a name," he said. "One name, someone who reads contracts the way mechanics hear engines. He left the industry 5 years ago. His wife died. After that, he stopped returning calls." Victoria did not move. "Who?" "Marcus Johnson." She did not recognize it. Thomas had to explain. Once a legendary corporate governance specialist out of Goldman, then an independent consultant who caught ambush structures buried inside legitimate-looking acquisitions. Then a car accident on a Tuesday afternoon. A wife named Sarah, who had been picking up their 4-year-old daughter from preschool, and a man who walked out of the industry without taking even his own bonus check. On the way, where is he now? Across the river. He owns a garage. He fixes cars. He answers questions about transmissions, not contracts. Victoria was already reaching for her coat. Thomas tried to follow her into the elevator. He hated the idea. She could see it in the way he held the elevator door, but he was a chief counsel who had let a trap into a contract, and he was not in a position to refuse her anything for at least the next 48 hours. She told him to wait in the car. She drove the Mercedes herself because her hands needed something to hold. The garage sat in a converted warehouse 3 blocks east of the river, in a neighborhood her tires had never touched. Johnson's Auto. Hand-painted sign. 2 bay doors open in spite of the cold. Her heels cracked on broken concrete, and she felt for the first time in her adult life that her shoes were the wrong shoes. Inside the front bay, a young mechanic in coveralls was bent over a sedan with the hood up. She looked up as Victoria walked in. help you? I am looking for Marcus Johnson." The mechanic, a black woman in her late 20s, whose name tag read Emma, studied Victoria with the slow patience of someone who had seen women like her wander into the wrong building before. "We don't do walk-ins. He doesn't do meetings. If you need work done on your vehicle, I don't need my car fixed. I need to talk to him about a contract." Emma's expression did not change. "Back bay. Through that door. But don't say I didn't warn you." The back bay smelled of motor oil and old coffee and something sharper underneath, like iron. Marcus Johnson stood at a workbench with his back to her, a transmission component cradled in both hands. He did not turn around. His shoulders, broad under the same work jacket she had seen on a sidewalk 5 hours ago, did not move. "Shop's closed for walk-ins," he said. "Emma should have told you." "She did. I'm not here about repairs." "Then I can't help you. Have a good afternoon." Victoria took one step further into the bay. "My company is about to sign a merger that may be designed to take itself away from me. I have 87 minutes before I sign, or do not sign $2 billion away. I was told you are the only person in Chicago who could read this contract fast enough to know." He turned then. He turned slowly, the way a man turns when he has just placed a delicate part down on a soft cloth, so it will not crack, and Victoria's breath caught somewhere between her chest and her throat, because she knew that face. She had seen it 3 hours ago. Across a sidewalk, across a chain, across a yellow tow truck, and 2 security guards laughing. The quiet black man in the faded work jacket. The man whose truck she had ordered hauled away without ever asking his name. For one long second, neither of them moved. The fluorescent lights buzzed somewhere overhead. Outside the bay doors, the wind off the river pushed grit across the pavement. Marcus held a clean rag in one hand and looked at her without expression. The way a man looks at weather he has already decided to walk through. Victoria swallowed. The sound felt obscene in the silence. "That truck this morning, that was yours." He wiped his fingers slowly. "Yes, I didn't. You didn't ask." He folded the rag and set it on the bench. "You didn't ask who I was. You didn't ask what I was doing. You saw an old truck in your spot, and a black man standing next to it, and you decided that was the whole story." He paused, almost gently. "It usually is. The way the story gets told." She had no answer. She had stood in front of senators. She had stood in front of regulators on the Hill. She had held her own across a table from men who had taught her father how to lie. And in this garage, in a neighborhood she could not have named, she had no answer at all. Behind Marcus, a small door near the rear of the bay opened. A girl stepped out. 8 years old, dark braids, denim overalls, a hardcover book about plants pressed to her chest. She stopped when she saw the woman in the long coat and the heels, and she tilted her head the careful way children tilt their heads when they are trying to read an adult. "Daddy," she said softly. The lady looked scared. Marcus glanced down at her. He placed one large hand on the top of her head, the gesture practiced and gentle. She did, didn't she? He did not look at Victoria when he said it. "Hi," the little girl said to Victoria, suddenly polite. "I'm Maya. Are you here because Daddy fixes cars, or because of the other thing?" Victoria opened her mouth and closed it. Marcus answered for her. "Just a work conversation, sweetheart. Why don't you go finish chapter 4? I'll come get you when we're done." Maya looked at Victoria one more time, openly studying her, and then she nodded, as if she had decided something, and disappeared back through the small door. The latch clicked. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Victoria realized her hands were shaking inside the pockets of her coat. "I'm sorry," she said. Marcus did not respond. "I am sorry," she said again, and she felt the word land differently in her own mouth than it had landed in any apology she had ever written. "I didn't ask. I should have asked. I have done that before to other people, and I have never thought about what it looked like from where they were standing. I am not asking you to forgive me. I am asking you to look at a contract, because I have nowhere else to go." He studied her for what felt like a decade. She watched him calculate something behind his eyes. Not anger, not even resentment, something quieter and older. The look of a man who had spent years deciding which fights were worth carrying home to his daughter. How much time? He said. 87 minutes. Where is the contract? In my car. With my chief counsel. He's waiting. Marcus picked the rag back up. He wiped his palms one more time, then tossed it onto the workbench. He took his jacket off the hook and put it on. And he did not say, I forgive you, and he did not say, I am doing this for you. He said, let's go, and he walked past her toward the front of the shop, and the wake of him smelled faintly of engine grease and rain. In the office, near the back, behind the small door, Maya was sitting on a swivel chair with the plant book open in her lap. She heard the front door of the garage swing shut. She set the book down very carefully and got up to lock the bay door her father had not had time to close behind him. The drive back across the bridge took 11 minutes. Marcus sat in the front passenger seat of the Mercedes, with his hands resting on his thighs and his eyes on the river. Thomas, in the back, watched him in the rearview mirror with the cautious fascination of a man who had only heard the legend. You're him, Thomas said finally. The Marcus Johnson. Used to be, Marcus answered. Then nothing else. In the lobby of Sterling Capital, the two security guards at the front desk looked up from their monitors as Victoria pushed through the revolving door. They saw her. Then they saw the man behind her. The shorter guard reached for his clipboard a little too fast. Sir, I'm going to need to see some identification. He's with me, Victoria said, without slowing. The guard did not look at her. Sir, this is a private executive floor. I'm going to need to. She stopped walking. She turned, very slowly, and her voice, when it came out, was flat and clean in a way that surprised even her. He is with me. He is a consultant for the firm. You've stopped him 3 times in this lobby today. If either of you puts a hand on his sleeve, you will be unemployed before he reaches the elevator. Am I being clear? The taller guard said. Ma'am, we were just. I asked you a question. Yes, ma'am. Marcus said nothing. He did not nod. He did not thank her. He glanced at her once, briefly, and there was something in that glance she did not yet know how to read. It was not gratitude. It was the look of a man taking notes on what kind of person was actually standing next to him. In conference room A, on the 43rd floor, Marcus sat down at the long table without ceremony. He asked for a copy of the full agreement, said no to coffee, said no to water, said no to a chair closer to the window. He opened the document on his laptop. He read. He read for 40 minutes in absolute silence. He did not highlight a single line. He did not underline. He did not take notes. He flipped pages with one finger, and his face moved exactly once. Around minute 23, a small tightening at the corner of his jaw that no one in the room caught except Victoria, who had been watching nothing else. At minute 41, he looked up. Who negotiated the integration timeline? Thomas straightened. Our M&A team, working with Garrison's corporate development group. Marcus nodded. Then he turned his laptop around. Victoria, come look. She came around the table. He pointed to 3 sections, hundreds of pages apart. Read section 12, subsection 14, clause 9. Then read section 8, subsection 3, clause 16. Then read section 19, subsection 7. Now, read them again. Replace every reference to affiliate entity with parent corporation. Replace integration milestone with board composition trigger. Replace disclosure timeline with control transfer sequence, she read. The trap rose up out of the page like something coming out of water. It had been there the whole time, in plain English, in language that had been designed to look so boring that no human being would ever finish reading it. A sequence of automatic triggers tied to harmless-sounding integration deadlines that would transfer majority control of Sterling Capital to Garrison's hidden parent company exactly 18 months after the merger closed. Not a takeover. A slow extraction, the kind that left her sitting in her father's chair for a year and a half before she realized she was no longer the one signing. Victoria heard herself ask, "How did you see this?" Marcus closed the laptop without hurry. "Because I used to know the man who designed structures like this." He did not say which man. He looked at the 7 attorneys around the table, none of whom had spoken since he had started reading, and he said, "This is what happens when smart lawyers are paid to design corporate ambushes instead of honest deals. You almost signed away your father's company. You have an hour and a half left." The 7 attorneys filed out of the room without being asked. Thomas closed the door behind them, gentle on the latch, as though loud sounds might startle the air. Marcus did not stand. He turned his chair slightly so that he was facing Victoria and not the empty seats. "This wasn't Garrison," he said. She frowned. Garrison didn't have the sophistication to build this. Their corporate development team would have come up with something cruder. What you're looking at is a signature pattern. There is exactly one private equity fund in this country that writes contracts this way. They are called Apex Strategic Partners. The man who runs them is Kenneth Vance. 6 years ago, Vance flew me to Manhattan and offered me money to design structures like the one inside your merger. I told him no and flew home. I never told anyone what he had asked me to do. Then my wife died and I never had to think about it again. Victoria sat down slowly across from him. Until today. Until today. "How many companies?" she asked. "How many times has this been done?" He turned the laptop again. He brought up a spreadsheet that had clearly been built over many nights in many quiet rooms. 14 companies in 7 years, he said. "That is the number I can confirm from public filings. There are almost certainly more." He scrolled. "Look at the names. Look at the CEOs at the time of acquisition." He waited. She read. 11 of the 14. 8 women. 4 black founders. 1 Latino. 2 of them counted twice. 11 of 14. And the pattern was not a coincidence. And it was not a pattern she had to squint to see. It was a thesis statement. "They pick targets they think nobody will defend," Marcus said quietly. "Boards that lose a young female CEO and quietly replace her with a man the analysts call seasoned. Boards that lose a black founder and quietly explain to the press that leadership has been restructured. Nobody asks too many questions when the right kind of executive ends up in the right kind of chair. Vance has been doing this for a decade, and he has never once been on the front page of anything." Victoria stared at the screen. She thought of her father's voice on the phone 3 days earlier. "Don't screw this up." She thought of the investor meeting, where Holstrom had used the word concerns and not the word fraud. She thought of every smiling face that had walked in and out of her conference rooms for 6 months, knowing exactly what they were signing her into. "Pass me the phone," she said. Marcus slid it across the table. She did not call her father first. She did not call Thomas. She called David Garrison directly. He answered on the second ring with a voice that was already polishing itself for cameras. "Victoria. Hello. Are we still on for noon?" "I was just about to." "We are not on," she said. "We are off. I am terminating the merger. Effective right now." A pause on the line. Then his voice came back, clipped and small. "Victoria, do not do this. I do not know what you think you have found, but we have been reviewing this contract for 6 months. There is a parent corporation behind your parent corporation," she said. "There is a fund called Apex. There is a sequence of triggers buried across 3 sections of an agreement that is supposed to be ours. There are 14 other companies that did not catch what I just caught. I am the 15th name on that list, David. I am calling to tell you I am not." The voice on the other end of the line dropped 20 degrees. "Vanessa. Victoria. You have no idea what you just did. I just stopped being your 16th name on a list," she said, and she hung up. She set the phone down very carefully, as if it might still be hot. Marcus watched her, and for the first time since she had walked into his garage, he gave her one small nod. The investors were told at 12:17. The press was told at 1:04. By 2 in the afternoon, the financial wires had picked up the story, and by 3 the cable shows were running her photo under headlines that used the word panic. Her father had called twice. She had not answered. By 6:15, his assistant said, "Upstairs." Now, Robert Sterling's office sat 1 floor above hers. He had retired 14 months ago and had not retired at all. The same oak desk, the same window, the same gray-haired man who had taught her the rules of a business that had never quite included her. He did not look up when she walked in. He did not stand. He read whatever was on his tablet for 1 slow second longer than necessary, the way she had watched him do to grown men for 20 years. "Sit down," he said. "I'll stand." He looked up. Explain, he said. She told him. Concisely. She did not raise her voice. She told him about Apex, about Vance, about the 14 companies, about the 11 names of women and black founders, and about the 18-month trigger that would have made him watch his own company become someone else's annual report. When she was done, he said one sentence. This sounds like panic from a daughter who couldn't take the heat. She did not flinch. She did not cry. She watched him not look at her while he said it. Then she said, "You are welcome." And she walked out of his office without permission and took the stairs back down because she could not bear an elevator with witnesses. At 1 a.m, in the kitchen of her apartment on the 22nd floor, her phone buzzed with an alert from the Financial Chronicle. An article had been posted 40 minutes earlier. Anonymous sources. SEC scrutiny of Sterling Capital. Concerns about disclosure practices. None of it was true. None of it had been called in by any agency. Someone inside the building had picked up a phone and made a story out of nothing. And the story had legs because she had given it skin. She poured a glass of wine she did not drink. She watched the lake. The phone rang. "Marcus," he said. "Are you up?" She laughed once. Dry. "Yes, I saw the article," he said. "I wanted to make sure you weren't reading it alone." She did not know what to say to that. She walked to the window, outside. Chicago was a sea of yellow and white pinpricks, and somewhere in it, in a small house she had never seen, a black single father was sitting in his own kitchen at 1 a.m, calling a woman whose security guards had laughed at him 15 hours earlier. "Tell me about your wife," she said. She was startled to hear herself say it. She did not take it back. There was a long silence on the line. Then Marcus said, "Her name was Sarah. She drove a Subaru. She was on her way to pick up Maya from preschool. A truck ran a light on Ashland. The officer who came to my office said she had not suffered. I do not know if that was a kindness or a habit." Victoria pressed her forehead against the cold glass. He kept talking. He told her about a deal in Melbourne 6 years earlier, about an accounting fraud he had missed because he had been working 20 clients at once, about people who had lost retirement funds because of him. He told her that Sarah's death had not broken him because Melbourne had already done it. He told her he had not spoken about either of those things to anyone in 4 years. She listened. She did not cry. Something in her chest, ancient and tired, moved 1 inch. Kenneth Vance came in person on a Tuesday, 2 days after the merger collapsed, 3 days before Sterling Capital's emergency board meeting. He did not call ahead. He arrived in the lobby of the 43rd floor at 10 a.m, with a single attorney, a silver-haired man with the bored expression of a hammer that had been used many times. Michelle came into Victoria's office white around the mouth. "He's here. Conference room C. He says it will only take 10 minutes. Victoria took Thomas with her. Kenneth Vance was in his late 50s. He had the kind of face that photographed well at fundraisers and gave away nothing under fluorescent light. He stood when she walked in. He extended his hand. She did not refuse it because refusing would have given him a sentence to use later. And she was not in the business of writing his sentences anymore. "Miss Sterling, thank you for seeing me." "Mr. Vance, what can I do for you?" He smiled the way men smiled when they were about to use the word ladies in a room that did not contain plural ladies. "I think we should talk about the situation. You have been making inquiries about my fund. You have been sharing information with parties who have no business hearing it. You cost us a perfectly legal acquisition, and I am told you have been speaking to a gentleman in Minneapolis who is about to enter a similar arrangement. Young lady, you are playing a man's game without quite understanding the rules." Victoria did not sit down. She walked, slowly, around the long table. She put her hand on the back of the chair next to his. She stood close enough that he had to tilt his head up to keep eye contact, and she let him do it. "You picked your targets very carefully, Mr. Vance. 11 women, 3 black founders, 1 Latino executive who was forced out of his own company within 8 months. You did not pick them because they were weak. You picked them because you assumed nobody would fight for them once they were gone. You assumed the boards would be quietly grateful. You assumed the press would be quietly bored. You assumed I would be quietly polite." She paused. "You were almost right." His smile did not move, but something underneath his smile did. "I would be careful," he said softly, "about the friends you keep. Mr. Johnson, for example, has a history. Melbourne, the Australian disaster. People lost their savings. People lost their houses. A jury in a civil suit found him professionally negligent. I imagine the press would be interested if reminded. She did not blink. The press already knows, she said. He told me himself. 3 days before you did. You came here to threaten me with information that I already have, Mr. Vance. That is the work of a man who does not understand the rules of his own game. He left. He did not slam anything. Men like Kenneth Vance never slam. That night, Marcus rang her doorbell at 8:30. Maya stood next to him in a green coat, hugging 2 large pizza boxes against her chest like a shield. Daddy said we should make sure you ate something, Maya announced. He said adults forget. We brought pepperoni and mushroom because he said you looked like a mushroom person. Victoria opened the door wider. Maya walked into the apartment with the calm interest of a small explorer. She set the pizza boxes on the kitchen island. She turned in a slow circle, looking at the bookshelves, the windows, the lake glittering 22 floors below. Then she walked over to Victoria and tilted her head up. Daddy says you're a brave one, she said quietly. He doesn't say that about many people. Mostly he doesn't say things like that out loud. The press conference was held on Thursday at 3 o'clock. 46 reporters in folding chairs, 6 cameras, 2 podiums, and only one of them used. Victoria walked in alone. She had not told Thomas she was doing this. She had not told the board. She had told Marcus on the phone the night before. And Marcus had said only, "You are sure?" And she had said yes. And he had said, "Then walk in alone." She did. She wore a black suit and no jewelry. She placed a manila folder on the podium and did not open it. 3 weeks ago, she said, representatives of a private equity fund called Apex Strategic Partners visited me in this building. They threatened me because I had refused to sign a merger contract that would have transferred control of this company to a hidden third party within 18 months of closing. Today, I am going to show you how that fund operates. I am going to give you names. I am going to give you dates. I am going to give you the names of the executives they replaced, and I am going to ask you to notice the pattern in those names. She spoke for 38 minutes. She named 14 companies. She named 11 women. She named 3 black founders and 1 Latino executive. She put up a slide showing shell company ownership traced back through Meridian Holdings to Apex itself. She did not mention Marcus. Not once. He had asked her not to, and she had given her word. She closed the folder. Apex will sue me, she said. They will sue this company. They will say I am reckless. They will say I am unstable. They will dig through every decision I have ever made, and they will find something to leak. I am telling you ahead of time, so that when it happens, you will know exactly what it is. Thank you. The room was silent for a full count of 4 before the questions started, and by then she was already walking out. Within 8 hours, 2 of the named companies had publicly confirmed her account. Within 24, the Wall Street Journal had assigned 3 reporters to a deep investigation. Within 48, the Securities and Exchange Commission had announced a formal inquiry into Apex Strategic Partners. Within 72, Kenneth Vance had filed a $200 million defamation suit and an emergency motion to freeze Sterling Capital's operating assets, pending the outcome. The hearing on the freeze motion was held in federal court on Monday morning at 9. Judge Margaret Chen, 54 years old, 23 years on the bench, watched Apex's lead attorney read his prepared remarks for 6 minutes before she set down her pen. Counsel, she said. He stopped mid-sentence. You are asking me to freeze a company's assets based on a hypothetical risk of asset transfer, while your own client is currently the subject of an active SEC investigation for moving real assets through real shell entities. Is that correct, Your Honor? The matters are not. Motion denied, Judge Chen said. If you would like to refile when you have actual evidence of wrongdoing instead of speculation about your opponent's bookkeeping, my docket is open. Until then, please do not waste this court's morning. We are adjourned. The gavel came down. Marcus was sitting alone in the second row behind the defense table. He had walked in alone and taken the seat closest to the aisle. He wore a dark coat over the same kind of work shirt he had worn the first time she met him. Nobody in the courtroom knew who he was. Not the reporters, not the attorneys, not the bailiff who had checked his ID at the door without recognizing the name. Victoria turned as she gathered her papers. She caught his eye across the railing. Neither of them smiled. Neither of them needed to. 6 weeks later, James Hendricks, of Hendricks Industrial in Minneapolis, released a brief statement to the local paper. It thanked an unnamed colleague in Chicago for a private warning that had allowed his family company to step away from a partnership offer that would otherwise have ended the firm. He did not give the name. He did not have to. Within a month, 3 other CEOs had reached out to Victoria, directly through Thomas. One was a Latina woman building a logistics company in Phoenix. One was a Black founder running a healthcare startup in Birmingham. One was a young Vietnamese-American CEO in Seattle who had inherited her father's import business and did not yet know who in her own boardroom was trustworthy. Sterling Capital quietly opened a small advisory desk, pro bono, dedicated to contract review for female and minority-led companies facing acquisition offers. Marcus was the only consultant on the file. He worked from the garage. He did not move offices. On a Saturday in late April, Victoria drove out to Johnson's Auto in a used Toyota Camry she had bought 3 weeks earlier. She had sold the Mercedes the day she stopped needing her father's approval. The Toyota had 96,000 miles on it. It started every morning. She pulled up in front of the bay doors. The afternoon light was the kind that made the river glitter and made the cracks in the pavement look softer. Maya was sitting on an old leather car seat someone had pulled from a junked sedan, reading a chapter book about birds with the index page folded back. She looked up. She smiled. "Hi, Miss Victoria." "Hi there, sweetheart." Marcus came out from the back bay, wiping his hands on a rag. He had a smudge of grease on his cheek, and he did not bother to wipe it off. Victoria reached into her coat pocket. She handed him a single key on a plain metal ring. No fob, no tag. "It's a pickup," she said. "Same year, same model, same color as the one your wife sat in. I couldn't get the old one back. I tried. It had already been sold for parts, but I could try to make something right." Marcus closed his fingers around the key. He did not say thank you. He did not say I forgive you. He did not say anything at all for a long time. Then he turned to his daughter and said, "Honey, say hi to Miss Victoria. She is going to be eating pizza with us a lot now, I think." Maya grinned wide enough to show the gap where her front tooth had been the week before. Victoria stood in the doorway of the garage, with the smell of motor oil and rain in the air, and the long afternoon light coming through the bay door at an angle that made everything look gentler than it was. She did not think about the 43rd floor. She did not think about her father. She did not think about the chair her name was on, or the building her last name was carved into. For the first time in years, she was not thinking about what floor she was standing on. She was just standing in the right place.